24th, 2024, 2 o'clock Commissioner Consent Agenda meeting. For the record, I do want to just state that there was no written comments that were received for anything on today's agenda. So we will go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and for the record, all 5 commissioners are present. We do have our open public forum that is going to start here shortly. I do want to state that we do have, I believe, 10 people that have signed up for open public forum. We normally go for about 15 minutes, so what I'm going to do is allow everyone who has already signed up to speak. I won't be taking any additional people at that point in time, but you will all have 2 minutes. So 2 minutes, which is going to extend us just a little bit for that. And I do want to say thank you to Becky Dickerhoof, who normally comes up and speaks every time, who has just given us written comments today and will not be speaking today. So with that, I am going to, I'm not sure that these are in the order that I received them, just as we were trying to keep them in order. But again, when you come up to the podium, if you would please state your name and address, and then you will have 2 minutes. At the end of the 2 minutes, I will be stopping you at that point in time, and the timer will be on the clock up here. So we will start with Bob Graham. I think today, with having 10 people, trying to keep track of who's yielding time, I'm going to ask that everyone just speaks for their 2 minutes. Usually in advance, people have let me know that they're going to yield their time to somebody, and so, again, trying to keep this orderly today. And I would just say in the future, if you let us know in advance that you're yielding your time, then I'm happy to try to make that accommodation.
This is kind of like making up rules as we go.
Yeah. Oh, no, excuse me, sir, if you're going to make comments from the floor, I will ask you to leave. Thank you.
My name is Bob Graham. I live at 11404 West Dino Road, and I'd like to say a few words about the water and property values and the zoning change from the rural traditional to allow mining on a 167-acre field next to my house. It's the zoning change is known as ZW0222. To clarify a little better, this site is a mile long and at places a half a mile wide. It makes Acme Pit and Pool east of Broadway near Trucktown seem minuscule by comparison, and there are no homes or building sites near that. Here, our homes are surrounded by homes. This property is surrounded by homes. The water out here is very unreliable. Some places the water is very deep, other places very shallow. Just to the south and upstream is the site of Northern Crest land. The water table is very shallow there. Some places surface water is visible. Other locations the water is only 8 feet below the surface. Cattails and other aquatic plants are seen from Hayford Road. Our neighbors and I tried to explain how many at the many meetings that we attended, how we could not convey that we did not want our land or property turned into an ugly wasteland in Spokane County for the benefit of some greedy out-of-town pirate. We expected Al French to represent us, the voters and citizens of his district.
Thank you. And we do have your written comment. So next I have Terry Horn.
Hi, my name's Terry Horn. I'm at 10,007 West Strawsbury Avenue. So from the SCCCO, Chapter 11.20, it clearly states that if you know of a critical aquifer recharge area, you know it's a potable source for domestic wells, you are to allow the individuals who are negatively impacting the critical aquifer recharge area so that we don't contaminate it. It's in the SCCCO, Chapter 11.20. It's pretty bloody easy. How come there's no ordinance being controlled? Where's our representative? We are flooding. And that flooding in the high-risk drainage areas, which again, the county chose not to disclose to any of the districts. We can find the high-risk drainage area in North Spokane, Central, Glen Rose, and the West Plains, the largest high-risk drainage area. They knew that the lack of mitigation, of the flooding, the lack of flood development permits in a known area, the county's been lying to FEMA for decades. Why? To save the developer's bottom line so you can artificially increase our assessments? Put the financial burden on us? I was at a RAB meeting just the other day. Where was our representative? Nobody there to help the constituents that are being negatively impacted by poisoned water. Has anybody even checked the alfalfa or the feed or our farmers markets? No, EPA's only checked the cattle and the chickens. Are we eating this? Oh, I'm pissed. I'm very pissed. I don't know what is going on up here, but we need some representation. I'm glad that there's a recall.
Let's see. Go to John. Next we have John Hancock.
I live at 3721 North Garfield Road in Spokane. My name is John Hancock.
Thank you.
We applaud Mr. French's goal
Do have your statement.
of clean water for everybody. That's our mission too in the West Plains Water Coalition. The coalition's appeal for ongoing action is simple: a well test for everybody who wants one and a filter for everyone who needs one. This forever chemical deserves a unified plan featuring all the talent, influence, and resources of county government, plus professional PFAS engineering. We've extrapolated the need for home filters and gotten a jump on what we think the cost will be. We've established significant working relationships with Fairchild, Washington Ecology and Health, and EPA Region 10, plus similar grassroots organizations in PFAS-affected neighborhoods across the country. We can quickly extrapolate the current well test data and the costs of home filter systems if we work together. We propose, number one, a multi-person PFAS work group of skilled and aware people from all the agencies and citizen groups to assess everything already known. Number two, naming and defining all the PFAS issues, accountabilities, and options. Number three, recommending regulatory changes, not just funding. Number four, commit to maximum transparency and sincerity. Number five, report out with a draft plan by November the 10th. This is far too important and too complicated for a one-man plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Craig Volosine.
520 North Grove Road. As we all wrestle with this daunting problem of poisoned water on the West Plains, let's take stock of the conditions we are now working under. These past 7 years, the actions, inactions, suppression of information, and outright resistance have been the modus operandi and course of conduct pursued at the very top levels of Spokane International Airport management. As a county commissioner, airport board member, regional health district board member, and member of S3R3 Public-Private Business Development Corporation, our District 5 elected representative has been at the very core of this problem and the airport's behavior since this problem emerged in 2017. He also did his best to block funding of a hydrogeologic study of this alarming environmental problem. And so now the conditions we find ourselves operating under have at least two distinct features. One, we are fully 7 years behind where we could have been in the solving and the remediation of this problem. Two, we now have on the West Plains a significant and growing distrust of our elected leadership. This atmosphere makes it rather difficult, let alone inappropriate, for Mr. French to continue to operate in the Lone Ranger or solo hero fashion. Disappointment and distrust are now too pervasive to expect meaningful participation by the public. What is needed, and I dare say overdue, is a comprehensive county-led task force to determine and implement both short-term and long-term solutions to this crisis. This task force needs to be made up of all the stakeholders and expertise that can be gathered. And it's you folks, the Board of County Commissioners, who are not only best positioned to organize this task force, you have also been, by sworn and authority and duty, the obligation to
Thank you.
do so.
Thank you.
Now, not later.
Next, I have Nick Scharf. Okay, thank you.
will take that moment from my
and-
last sentence. Can you defer to me?
No, not at this time, sir. Yes. And Nick, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Nick Scharf, 9415 West Trails Road on the West Plains, Spokane County.
Thank you.
So I'm going to just continue on where he left off. This scenario begs the question, how might a grant application or a request for legislative action be regarded if it has been submitted by an elected official who is no longer in office? Is that it? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Marilyn Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Sullivan. I live at 8402 East Sandalwood Lane in Spokane County. And I was really excited last week when Commissioner French announced that there was a press release about the availability or applications for water filtration systems that I was hoping to share with friends in the West Plains. So I've read the paper every day, I've looked in legal notices, I've checked the county website, and I have not found any press release in the last week. So I was wondering where I should find it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mike Peterson.
There is a press release, we'll get it. The press release, right?
Oh, we'll wait till at the end.
Mike Peterson, 1817 West Gardner here in Spokane. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. Unfortunately, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I'm a longtime environmentalist, and it's a shame that 7 years has gone by and pollution has occurred. People are watering their animals, their yards, their gardens. Are we going to be testing for PFAS on those people's properties that are in the realm of the Spokane International Airport? And if not, why not? I also wanted to bring up something else. A lot of my work was on forestry, and right now I'm working with Spokane Ponderosa to retain and enhance planting of trees. But what I'm seeing throughout the county is, I guess I call it urban sprawl. Thorpe Mountain, which is owned by the DNR, is at risk of being clear cut. The estates down there at Marshall Creek, Marshall Estates, again, a giant clear cut. These are not going to be housing for low-income people. It's going to be more urban sprawl. I'm also very concerned. A friend of mine did a map of all the dense forestry, and that map has changed now because of the Gray Fire. And there's a lot that needs to be done out there, and I would love to see work with Spokane County to do some thinning and retain our canopy as much as we can. Ponderosa is our natural tree. It actually survives really well, but when you cram it all in together, you get more bug outbreaks, and that's what's going on in some places, that we're having a lot of very dense stands that are also a huge fire risk. So hopefully we can do something about that together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Matthew Sorey.
I was going to defer my time, but I'll speak a little bit.
Okay, perfect. If you please come down and state your name and address for the record.
All right. My name is Matthew Sorey. I'm 429 East Gordon Avenue. I appreciate you guys coming out and giving me the time to speak. Something that I'm noticing, I've never been to one of these, so I'm kind of just back there observing. And one thing I'm really picking up is everybody to the left of Al French is very respectful and looking at the people talking. And Al French has kind of just been looking down the whole time and hasn't even really looked at people, made eye contact. So I just think that's kind of sad that one of our representatives that has the most complaints against him can't even give people eye contact. And as somebody who grew up in Medical Lake, I spent my first 18 years out there. Practically all of my longtime friends and family are out there, and a lot of them have just been drinking poison water practically for the last 7 years, and it doesn't really seem like there's anything getting done about it. So that's very concerning as well. So I really hope that gets resolved in this next election. And that's all I really have to say. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And then the last person that I have signed up for the public hearing or the open forum is Wiley Harris Knight Moore.
Common Air Kite. Yes, I am Wiley Harris Kite Moore, 4210 West Osage here in Spokane. To prelude my comments, when I started living here a year ago, I took 5 papers, and one of them is the Spokane paper. And I noticed that there were concerns about exactly what we're hearing today: water contamination, PBAs. Then as I read more and I watched the news, I noticed that there was one supervisor's name that kept coming up, and he's looking at me. I appreciate you doing that, sir. That concerned me. Coming from California, we tend to be a little more aggressive than the people here. As a very interested person in our indigenous peoples, I read Mr. French's comments that he said he had a plan to remediate these PBAs in our area, West Plains, and that he had talked to several of our tribal representatives. But when I've looked at that, I found that they don't agree that there is a plan that he's presented. The idea of putting water in a big giant pipe and putting it to a treatment plant by the college and then putting it into a river and then drawing out the same amount of water later on and pumping it back up to West Plains doesn't seem too feasible. And then when we hear it's maybe a year later, or maybe 2, or maybe 3, in the meantime, the cancer rate for our kids in that area, when I've looked at the health reports, is anywhere from 25 to 50% higher in that area than is anywhere else in the county. That's in Mr. French's area, the area I live in. I'm concerned. Fairchild completed a report in 2006. they were remediating. The airport board, which Mr. French sits on, wasn't. And the plan to have the federal government pay for all this is not going to happen. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, that will conclude our public comment for today. I'm going to just hand these slips over to our clerk. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I will look to my fellow commissioners for a portion of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve items 3, 4, 5, and 6, including all sub-items on today's agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for items number 3, 4, 5, 6, and all sub-items on today's agenda as printed. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. That will then take us to our public hearing item, which Nathan Thompson is going to be speaking to it. So this is the public hearing in the matter of the road name change, and I'm going to let you go ahead and start.
Thank you. Good afternoon, County Commissioners. I'm Nate Thompson, Public Works Traffic Engineer, for those of you who don't know me. So this is the continuation of public meeting we had a couple weeks ago. I wasn't present at that meeting, but my understanding is there was some public testimony for our original proposal for renaming the roads associated with our Bigelow Gulch reconstruction realignment project. We had some good comments, and we went back through and considered the comments and have an alternate proposal following up with that. So this map shows the area that we're talking about. Yellow line being the new Bigelow Gulch alignment. The green line, red line, and blue line are the existing Bigelow Gulch alignment that the roads will remain, and so they need to be renamed because we can't have two parallel alignments with the same name. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, thank you. So the first names that we're proposing to rename are Wiley Avenue, or we're renaming Bigelow Gulch, or Wiley Avenue on those two segments to Bigelow Gulch. They're along the same alignment that the new Bigelow alignment is going to be. So that's the first one. If you could skip to the next slide, please. The next segment is this segment just east of Palmer Road on the Bigelow Gulch alignment. It's going to be a short dead-end segment that has 4 parcels still accessing off of it. We're proposing to rename existing Bigelow Gulch to Newton Road on that segment. Next slide, please. For this segment of existing Bigelow Gulch, the segment west of Orchard Prairie that extends westward down to the new Bigelow Gulch alignment, we're proposing Griggs Road for the new name of that alignment. Next slide, please. And then the last renaming segment is the segment of existing Bigelow Gulch that extends from Orchard Prairie to the east where it intersects with the new Bigelow Gulch alignment. We're proposing to rename that segment Orchard Prairie Road, essentially extending Orchard Prairie to the north all the way down to the new Bigelow Gulch alignment. This is a revision from the last hearing where originally we had proposed extending SB Road. After considering the comment that SB Road is more of a minor gravel road and Orchard Prairie's paved, we thought it was a good comment and made more sense to extend Orchard Prairie instead of SB. And yeah, so that's my presentation here. Our Public Works Director, Kyle Tuig, will give some background why we were proposing Griggs Road as one of the proposed roads in this project.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Tuig.
Good afternoon. Kyle Tuig, Spokane County Public Works Director. Just wanted to give a little bit of background for those in the audience and a reminder to the board why Griggs Road was selected. I think it was originally proposed as Lancer Road there in that red alignment to the west of Orchard Prairie. This is a great suggestion from one of our county commissioners, and going back and looking into some of the history of the Bigelow Gulch area. Back in 1937, in the New Deal era, the U.S. Works Progress Administration, WPA is what it was called back in the 30s. It was a Depression-era funding mechanism to get Americans back to work. And one of the many, many, many county engineer predecessors going back into the 30s, who was the road engineer, his name was C.F. Griggs. He made a proposal to the WPA and received funding to pave several county roads, including what was an old dirt kind of farm to market trail road along the Bigelow Gulch area and what we now call Bigelow Gulch Road. And he had proposed to convert this into a fancy new thing called asphalt. And the feds gave Spokane County the money. We hired a bunch of local gentlemen to join the road crew. And with $378,000 from the feds, we paved 77 miles of county roads. So I hope one day we can get that deal again. But there's certainly some great history. I'm certainly proud to have some public works related suggestion for this naming, and to have our county engineer, or former county engineer's name out here on this whole corridor.
Very good. So this is a continuation of the public hearing that was started on September 10th, 2024 at our 2:00 meeting. I do have two people that have asked to testify. And since I will say it was on my part that I do not think that I closed the public testimony at that time and allowed for no further comments. So I am going to allow for these two people to comment today that are here. And so I have Karen Sprague, if you would like to come speak, you will have 3 minutes.
Karen Sprague, 8825 North Orchard Prairie Road. I did not realize that it had been considered by the road to rename it to Orchard Prairie Road, which is what I was proposing, because it is Orchard Prairie. It's Orchard Prairie School. The road to Green Bluff says Green Bluff Road. The road to 5 Mile says 5 Mile Road. So it makes sense that the road to Orchard Prairie would be Orchard Prairie Road. So I'm very pleased with that. Griggs Road doesn't strike a loving response from me. There are so many pioneers in the Orchard Prairie area. One of the ones that is very current is the Cutlers, who developed a carrot that was very, very widely received in the world, and they still live on Orchard Prairie. So several people have asked me to propose Cutler Road. And another proposal is to name a portion of it Grange Road, but I'm ambivalent on it. I'm very, very happy to see that Orchard Prairie Road is being considered. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The other person that I have is John Millett. And John, you will have 3 minutes, and if you state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Chair. My name is John Miller.
I live at 7009 East Bigelow Gulch Road. I went out and got signatures on a petition. The Grange Hall has been there for nearly 100 years. And my wife came up with Old Grange Road. And everybody has been real happy with it I talked to. One thing everybody wanted to know why it couldn't be Old Grange Road. We know. We don't want to waste time on it. It can't be. But everybody was one road, one name. Don't split it with two names. Don't mess with Orchard Prairie or don't mess with Espy. The first 2 pages are all residents that live on Bigelow Gulch Road, all except one. The second 2 pages are people that live on Espy and Orchard Prairie and in the local area that use that road every day. And they all agree that Old Grange Road would be a good name for it. It gives it the idea that it's not a new road. We know that we have to change our address. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at the public hearing for the item 7A on today's agenda? Okay, and then when you're done, if you would fill out one of the blue forms for us. Thank you, and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Aiden Franklin. I live at 1319 East Blackwood Lane in Spokane, Salem. It's up on the South Hill. And I heard the name Griggs Road. And if they're going to name it Griggs Road, I'd wish to see something like a rock or something there that talks about the significance of this person. So it's not a forgotten name and people are wondering, why was it named Griggs Road? So that's my little thing I was sitting back there and heard, and I wanted to state that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to testify? Oh, we have, I can't see. Okay. I believe we have someone online, CC, I can't see the name, so
CC Weber.
Okay, CC, go ahead. Please state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Cece Weber. I live at 7527 North Orchard Prairie Road. I've lived here for a little over 35 years. I think it's important to note that Orchard Prairie was a community when Spokane was under 1,000 people. There's a lot of history here. The roads named in the area reflect the early settlers. Names like Eulig Road, Doak Road, Palmer Road, Espy Road, Stoneman Road. Those are the people who settled this area. The original school that was established in 1894 is still active on Orchard Prairie. There's a cemetery that was established in 1884. That cemetery is still cared for by the residents of this community. Obviously, many of the settlers have passed on, but their families still live here. It's a very close community. So the name Griggs didn't live here. I don't think that has meaning to the community. The Newton name and the Lancer Road does not have meaning to the community. The Cutler family that was mentioned earlier, that's someone, they had a significant impact on the community. The Cutler family still lives here today. The Clothier family is here. They have, that's an important part of the history that shaped this community. Chief Gary from the Spokane tribe was here in this community. Catherine Heiberg is someone who documented the first 100 years of this community. Her book was published. Orchard Prairie was a community in the late 1800s. I just think it's important to acknowledge the history of the community. We would appreciate that because we are the people who live here. It has to be meaningful to us. We value history highly. Appreciate you listening to me and listening to the other people of the community, and hope that you will make a decision that values the history of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is my last call for anyone wishing to testify on item number 7A. Seeing no one else, I will close the public testimony. Is there any other comments that any of the commissioners want to make, or any questions that they have for Nate or Kyle?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I want to, I know Kyle touched on touched on a lot of these, the significance of the name Griggs, and actually it most recently appeared in a Spokesman Review article from back in 2018. This was an article, a Nick Deshaies article titled "Getting There: Big Changes Coming to Bigelow Gulch Road." And so, because this is a portion of what will formally be Bigelow Gulch Road when the new section opens, there was one section of the article that said, in 1937, the New Deal era U.S. Works Progress Administration had money to spend to put Americans to work during the Great Depression. Spokane County Road Engineer C.F. Griggs, which did a little more research, and that is Clarence Francis Griggs, proposed using some of that money to pave Bigelow Gulch Road using the construction. The feds gave the go-ahead. Local men joined the road crew, and 77 miles of county roads, including Bigelow, were paved thanks to the $378,000 in WPA money. So, looking at the road and its history and its significance, prior to this, it was a dirt road. I'm not gonna argue about the significance to the area. I'm arguing about the significance to the road itself. I know 2 weeks ago, Lancer was not a popular name. I didn't like Lancer either. To this day, I can't tell you where Lancer came from. It was on some list that was okayed by the fire department. Griggs Road is a road that there is no other Griggs Road in Spokane County. I think the two closest I could find, I think there was one in Sandpoint. I think there's a Griggs in Walla Walla. But ours is related to Clarence Francis Griggs, and there's not going to be any confusion when it comes to our public safety first responders if they have to respond to something on Griggs Road, which I hope they never do. But and I also want to give credit where credit is due. I was not the one that found this article. It was Spokane City Councilman Michael Cathcart. I had a discussion with him about what we were going through, asked what they do when they have to rename roads, and he did some research. I didn't ask him to, but he did, and I thank him for it. I think it's a good compromise. Again, there's connection to the road itself, not as strong of a connection to the community, and I get that, but we have to have we got to have some names. We got to be able to keep the folks safe if there happens to be a 911 call or we need an emergency response. I think it's a good compromise, and I'm glad it's not Lancer. So I will be voting yes.
Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to back up a little bit and just let the public know that we had a briefing earlier. Was it yesterday? I'm losing track of time. Last week, where we learned and it was explained to us that really the county code lays out a long list of criteria that have to be taken into account for a road name to be pre-approved. As we talked about, part of that really relates to safety for dispatch and 911 calls, making sure there's no confusion. And Griggs, as we stand here today, has been approved through that long list of criteria. At our last public hearing, as Commissioner Kern stated, the overwhelming public comment was that no one liked Lancer, and I think we asked the question, where does Lancer come from? And no one knew. So it was please anything but Lancer. And then it was also, we do like Orchard Prairie, and we like that name being extended further, and that does honor the history of the area. And we do have some time sensitivity with this issue, because as the road is set to open next month, people need to be on notice of what the new name will be so they can update their personal affairs, make sure medications are delivered to the right door. So it is important that we make a decision. I appreciate all the public testimony. I am comfortable moving forward with the idea of Griggs. I appreciate Councilmember Cathcart via Commissioner Kearns' office bringing it forward. I think it's a creative idea. I think that Mr. Griggs was integral to the history of creating the old Bigelow Gulch Road during that new era, so it's a significant improvement from where we were. It's an elegant compromise, and I'm happy to support it.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion. Okay, I'm going to look to our attorney because I think we need to, what we have is no longer valid. So I want to make sure we're making the correct motion. We could do that because there was no motion prior.
Yeah, if I can ask, stop me if I'm going in the wrong direction, but I move to approve item 7A as presented by staff
Today.
Does that work?
Yes, as we have already had an open public hearing on the matter, I believe that complies.
Okay.
And I seconded it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve item 7A as presented today by staff. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we're going to turn to our first of our public roundtables. So today is the first public roundtable that we're going to do for our budget, 2025 budget. We have our general fund revenue estimates that we're going to be discussing. And so I will let Randy Bischoff, our CFO, our budget, what is your title?
Director of Finance.
Director of Finance, there we go. Randy, would you like to please tell us about our revenues?
Certainly. I would love to do that. We can go to the next page, Ron. There we go. All right, so this is an overview of our revenues. As you can see, the blue section, that is our largest source of revenue now at the county. That is our sales taxes. As you will notice, the 24 budget, we had put 79.3 in that budget. We have the same amount in the 2025 budget. Above that, you see the red line is property taxes. You'll see a small increase in that going for 25 from 24, and we'll discuss that later. Charge for services, and then also other revenues. So right now, our total budget is at $259.3 million for the general fund. Next slide. So this here just gives a little bit of history on our sales taxes. Every month we say, how much were we over last year? So this here graph shows the last 20 years of rolling 12-month averages, percentages. So, if we start at the left, that 12-month cycle was 6-7% higher than the previous 12-month cycle, and we change it every month. And as you can see, it's moved around. So for example, in that red section, it was going down. That was the early 2000s recession. And then we came out of that, and it kind of, as with all recessions, you kind of shallow out. And then the state of Spokane Valley incorporated, so we lost a lot of sales tax revenue. So we had a deep dive for 12 months because, again, it's a rolling 12. So that, each time you lose a month, it keeps getting added on. So that bottomed out in 2004. In 2004, 2005, we did add the public safety sales tax. And so that's when we started seeing that revenue go back up. It peaked in the 2006, 2007 area, and then we had the Great Recession. That's when the housing market collapsed and we went down, and really it took us, the technical recession was only 2 years long, but it took us about 6 years to come out of that. Then in 2014, we started growing, and we've been on a strong growth pattern, and then COVID hit the tan area, and we went down again. Then we rebounded out of COVID, and now we're going, as you can see, the very end is our current trend. We are not in a recession. Go to the next slide.
Madam Chair, just a question on this slide, if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
When was the change to allow collection of sales tax based on where the online purchase is? Do we know? Just curious.
I'm trying to remember. I want to say around 7. I'd have to look.
Okay.
It was in the late teens, though, I believe, when that case was settled in South Dakota.
Okay, thank you.
So the next slide. So as we're looking and planning toward next year's sales tax revenue, since it is our largest, we looked at the previous recessions and looked how the slope was, how we came out of them. And the slope we're in now, the current trend, is very similar to the early 2000s, where it started shallow and it just shallowly went down. And which is why, economists are talking about we're not going to hit a recession, we're just going to have a soft landing, we'll get down close to zero and start back up. So that is why, versus the other recessions, which are very steep. So if you go to the next slide, that's why we, based upon what we're reading and the economists and that, we do expect some growth next year. We expect it to be 1%. And that's why our revenue is flat, because in '24 we had budgeted a 2% increase. And as of today's report, we're at 0.6%. We think we'll get to 1% by year end based upon what we're reading and seeing, and with interest rates going down. And then we are expecting, based upon the economist reports, another 1% next year, which will get us back to what we had planned in '24, because we will fall short, we believe, of our '24 goal. So that's why we are showing no growth in sales taxes for '25 versus '24 budget. There will be an actual growth over our collections, just not over the budgeted amount. So that's sales taxes. The next slide. Here's just where the sales taxes come from. There's 4 parts that make up this sales tax. There's the normal local retail sales and use tax. There's the public safety 1/10, the criminal justice 1/10, and then the juvenile detention and jail sales tax, that's the other 1/10. So those are the amounts that we get from those. And the reason these 1/10s don't always equal is they have different tax bases. Like the juvenile detention and jail sales tax, that 1/10 is based upon all sales. Public safety, we only keep 60%. And there are certain things such as car rentals that are excluded. And then the criminal justice is just an odd thing. So, sorry, don't know that one. But that's why when we say 1/10, they're not always equal. Next slide. So that's sales taxes. Property taxes. Right now we are seeing about a $700,000 increase in our property taxes. These numbers only include last year's levy and new construction. So new construction this year added about $1 million to our property tax, but we will only recognize about $700,000 because a lot of the growth was in the TIF areas. So that money, 75% of that money goes to the TIF, so we're getting a lesser percentage of that. We will have another meeting on November 18th where we talk about property taxes in detail. For example, you will have decisions on if you want to take a percentage growth. and it could be up to the legal maximum, or you could do a road levy shift if you wanted to, but those are decisions that you will make on the 18th, so they have not been built into this model. So that gets us to our property taxes of $61.7 million for the general fund. And then you can see the history from 2018. On the far left, you'll see our levy rate. The maximum levy rate for the county is $1.80 per thousand. This year, we are projecting that it rounds to 70 cents, but it will actually be just under 70 cents per thousand. It'll be at 69.84, I believe, is the number. So, but again, those are just rough projections based upon what we know today. These numbers will change a little bit as state assessed and refund levies come in, but this is what we know today from the assessor's office. Next slide. Another large portion of our revenue is from charges for services. You see the blue one on the bottom, that's our big contracts with outside agency municipalities from the sheriff's office, whether it be the Valley contract, whether it be Medical Lake, Deer Park, any municipality we have a contract with, whether it be the schools, school resource officers, things like that. That red section, that's more of our detention services where we are billing back to other municipalities that have guests in our detention facilities. Then we have, like the district court, prosecutor, superior court, all those little charges for services. And then on top, we have other services. So this is things like scraps, the auditor's office, like vehicle licensing. We collect about 4.4 to 4.1 million a year from that. Treasurer, elections, we charge back for those. So that's going to be in that black section. So we're looking for next year to have an increase in this area of about $2 million. And half of that is in law enforcement. Next slide. And then we have our last piece, which is the other revenue. You can see they're color-coded. So the blue on the left, that's your licenses and permits, so animal licenses, marriage licenses, franchise fees. Not a lot of money, so that's very consistent there. The black is intergovernmental, cannabis excise tax, criminal justice, DSHS. The orange section, fines and penalties, so this would be your property tax penalties, your speeding tickets, things like that, traffic infractions. Red is miscellaneous. You'll see a big bump in 2023. We collected about 4 to 5 million of one-time money, whether it be Monsanto or other things. So if we took that one-time money out, that'd have been about about $8 million, 8 to 9. Then in 2012, you'll see an increase up to 12 and 14 in 2025. That is because we shifted the interest from the special revenue funds and the internal service funds to the general fund. So that was about a $4.5 million shift in 24, and rates have been higher now, so it's actually going to be more money to us in 25. It's about $5.5 million. So that's why that red area is up. Other financing sources, so this is operating transfers. Again, that's things like mental health sales tax. If you're transferring that in, we've got that budgeted at 9.8 this year, and then we just have a little bit of other taxes. So in total, we are expecting an increase in this area up to 41.5 million, so another $1 million increase. So our main increases are going to be this other revenue, about $1 million, about $1 million from services, and about $700,000 from property taxes. So that's where our general fund revenue is at. Next slide. And that's it. Again, property sales taxes, like I said, we're looking at a 1% growth next year. It's just we do not expect to hit budget this year, so that's why we're budgeting the same amount. The property tax, it does not include the road shift, a 1% increase, or any banked capacity. Again, that is going to be a decision for the commissioners on the November 18th meeting. And the others are growing up minimally. Any questions?
Commissioner Waldron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the previous slide, the other revenue, that red bar there, so would that also include American Rescue Plan dollars that we are planning to spend, or opioid settlement dollars?
Opioid settlement dollars in the 2023 actuals, and we're actually going to be reclassifying those to our grants fund, so we can manage those kind of in a separate bucket outside of general fund operations, knowing that that has kind of a finite timeline, a long timeline, but a timeline to it. And then the ARP dollars are coming in waves as internal transfers. So they're actually in the other financing sources because it's one fund, a grant fund of federal sources paying another fund. Accounting technicalities on that one.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jordan.
Randy, thanks for the info. Appreciate it. When you say 1%, we're expecting 1% sales tax growth. Was that right?
That is correct. 25 over 24.
Actuals?
Actual to
Okay.
actual.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions for Randy from the board? Okay, so this is a public hearing item. This is our budget public hearing. So I will open it up for public testimony. That anyone who would like to come down and speak to the budget, I will let you know that we will have several other public budget hearings. So this will be continued, the hearing, and our next one will be October 15th at 5:30. So if anyone would like to come down at this time and speak to the budget, you're welcome to come down and speak. I'm not seeing anyone just jump up and run down, or anyone on the Zoom. Budgets are just such exciting topics for everybody. I think everyone sees numbers and they just start to glaze over. So, second call for anyone wishing to testify on the budget. Oh, Becky Dickerhoff. I'm sorry.
Oh, it seems like this is an appropriate time to remind you that 1590 could become part of the budget. Yeah, you agree. This would be a real incentive towards housing market in our county.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to testify? Okay, seeing no one, then we will be continuing this. So I will not be closing the open public testimony. I will be continuing the open public testimony until October 15th at 5:30 for our next budget roundtable. But that does bring us to the end of our agenda. So is there anything else on today's agenda?
Nothing from me, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Nothing for me either, Madam Chair.
Very good. Then I will conclude our meeting for today. Again, remember that we are continuing the budget roundtable hearings to next Tuesday, or till Tuesday, October 15th at 5:30, and I will adjourn this meeting.